How does God get in the way?
So I assume you're referring to this comment from the Affirmations of Humanism.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to point out that the vast majority of secular humanists that I've dealt with would readily accept the existence of some sort of divine entity if there was sufficient evidence for such an entity. Whether he's getting in the way or not, if there's evidence, we have to accept that. However, they see no tangible, real evidence for the existence of such an entity. What's more, the properties ascribed to this entity by most of the world's religions, especially the ones that we see here in the United States, are properties that secular humanists don't always find ethically appealing. The Judeo-Christian God typically is portrayed in at least many denominations in this country as being very patriarchal. There is inequality for women in many religious denominations. There is a sense of unburdening the self of responsibility. In many religions, there's a sense where if there's a problem to be faced, perhaps the correct response to that problem is to simply give up, accept the problem, and let this divine force take care of the problem for us. An answer of praying rather than doing. This secular humanists find abhorrent. If there is a problem that needs to be addressed, human lives, human well-being is at stake, those are problems that we have to throw our own personal effort at. As imperfect as it might be, we have to focus our energy at it and not just give up and say, this is something for a divine entity to take care of. I'm trying to remember this gentleman's name. The author of The French Lieutenant's Woman, I believe his last name was Fowles.
That's right.
Wrote a piece called The Aristos, in which he addressed the traditional story of Pascal's wager. As you recall, Pascal's wager is that one might be inclined to believe in a supreme being, because if one doesn't believe and it turns out that there is no God, there isn't a loss. But if it turns out that there is a God, one suffers intolerably for not believing. However, if one believes and there is not a God, there is no similar cost. Fowles turned this on its head, and this argument on its head, and said, it is important for us to not believe that there is such a God in the here and now, because doing so allows us to pass the buck when it comes to justice in this world. It allows us to say there will be divine justice in the afterlife. We don't have to worry about justice in the here and now. And in that way, believing that there is such a God taking care of things can get in the way of humans actually proactively taking action and doing things that really matter.
Well, those are all very true statements, but I've heard people that are on the other side of the theological fence that are coming at it from a religious perspective and saying, look, we have this cartoon image of God and the devil. It doesn't work in the trenches. There is scriptural arguments against this particular interpretation of the divine. There are theological arguments against this in particular interpretation of the divine. Why not go that way? Wouldn't it be easier to try to change from within than try to, change from without?
So it's interesting to note that that the humanist movement, broadly construed, emerged from clearly a religious society. If you read the passages of a document called the Humanist Manifesto, which was penned some decades ago, it described itself as an evolution of traditional religious views. They thought that we don't have to scrap all the good things that we've learned through these theological inquiries, but we need to rigorously look at what those inquiries produced and reevaluate them and determine what is good, what is the wheat and what is the chaff. So there really is a sense of slow evolution in the humanist movement. It's just now time for us to recognize those aspects of traditional religion that are either unjustified empirically or unjustified ethically, and address those openly rather than quietly in back rooms.
Well, I have a problem that I often pose to people on this show, and moralists, etc. And we were talking a little bit about identity before the show started.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a bigot, raised in a family of bigots, in a community of bigots. I have a certain set of existential problems that I will bring into my life. There will be unnecessary suffering that I bring to myself because I've pursued this particular avenue based on my upbringing, the value system that I've been taught, and the places that I've been rewarded. My father has patted me on the head and said, "Good boy," when I've said the right racial epithet at the right time.
Sure.
My mother has sung me lullabies that have ethnic groups being caught by the toe, hollering and letting them go. And suddenly now I've come to this place in my life where I have this particular existential problem. And if, from the secular humanist perspective, somebody needs to stand there and some on the other side of the fence and say, "You're being an idiot. Just stop this bigotry and your problems will go away." Now, from this person's perspective, what you just said to them is, "You want me to be something different today.